In this video, I'll discuss split views. Now, it's very common when you're creating a web page to have split views, to have multiple containers on your page. They're side by side, and they contain different text and objects, and they comprise the layout. And that's great because we want to have that on a web page, these separate containers. We don't always want to use the columns feature of HTML5, but the issue is what happens when that screen becomes so small, like on a tablet or a cell phone, that it won't display properly. So we want to be able to work with that, and it's quite a simple solution, actually. So what I've got here is a main container that contains everything on the page outside of the menu and the wrapper. Or I should say inside the wrapper, but outside of the menu. And then I have two containers, one called Content 1, one called Content 2. Now, these containers contain some dummy text and some images, and this is the result. So we have our left and right. Now, granted, you can have multiple containers side by side. It's not uncommon to have 3 columns, 4, and so on and so forth, but I've just used 2 with these side-by-side containers, and then everything inside these containers would be the content on your page. Now, here's the thing. If I go ahead and start resizing this, you can see everything's responding. The font size is getting smaller, and so is the menu and the images. Now, we reach a certain point where we're actually past the threshold of where we want to be for small devices like smartphones and tablets. And here we want to change things because we no longer want to have side-by-side containers. We actually want to treat that content, that split view, now as stacked content. So you can see, if I scroll down, that we've got our content under, or our second container, I guess, the right-hand container, will follow the first container, the left-hand container on the big screen. And if we had a third container, that one would be after this one. And again, I'll go ahead and resize it back, and you can see there's our page with the containers side by side. Now, the way of doing that is pretty simple. I'll go up to the CSS and take a look. And right here is where we have our Content 1. Now, what I've done is just simply set the width at 50%. Same with Content 2. And then gave it a top value, both of them a top value of 45 pixels. Now, the reason I did that was because the drop-down menu or the navigation menu is sitting on top of those containers, so we need to allow some space for that. And once we've done that, I've actually given or used the CSS Rule Box Sizing. So we use Mozilla, WebKit, and just regular box sizing to cover all the major browsers. And what border-box does is ensure that the content on your containers is actually treated inside the container rather than outside. When you set padding on a div container, if you don't use the border box with box sizing, what will happen is that that padding that you add to the container will be added outside the container, and it'll mess up your layout. So that's just why I did that. Now, let's go down to our media query. We have our media query here for a maximum width of 800 pixels. And what that means is that the minute that the screen size becomes lower than 801 pixels, as it might be on a smartphone, then go ahead and use these rules. And here I have my Content 1 and Content 2. Now, I've actually set the width using the VW property, or the VW measurement type, I guess. And what that means is viewport width. So one viewport width equals 1% of the entire width of the viewport of the window. So 100 is treated as 100%. So what I want to do is set those both at 100%, which is why they start to stack now, because they're both set at 100%, and then I don't float them side by side as I would with a larger screen. I actually just have either float none or just not use the float property at all. I've also set a font size here of 2 VWs. So this is very important because when you're working in responsive design, you want to be able to ensure that everything responds, and that includes font sizes and things like that. So you want to be able to make sure that those, along with images, and here you can see that I've set image width at 50%. Just a simple setting there that will actually change the size of the images and make them bigger. Let's go ahead and take a look at this again. So this is the result. You can see those images became much bigger, but that's okay on a smartphone screen. That actually looks pretty good. So that's effectively how you do it. It's really quite a simple process, and the result is fantastic, and it'll actually allow you to have that side-by-side content, those split views, using a couple of simple rules in CSS3.